Hello everybody and welcome to the British Pint. My name is Christoph and today, continuing my series on historical ales, I'm trying to recreate a clone of the Meantime Now IPA, which was recently created by the Craft Beer channel. A very nice channel that has feature-length videos about historical topics, modern topics, just a lot of everything. And just last week they featured this recipe of the Now IPA from Meantime. I wanted to recreate it for two reasons. First of all, I have almost all of the ingredients at hand. And second of all, I think it's very nice to give some more attention to this project because it's very deserving and very well done. Something that is not as optimal is that by the time that this video will be published, after I tasted the beer and know that everything worked fine, it will have been 5 weeks since the video was up. So maybe the hype is already gone, but I don't think so. I think this will be quite an important topic for at least some weeks. What I cannot do is use Harlequin hops, which is one of the main hops that they used in the beer, because it's impossible to get these in Germany, but I can get almost all the ingredients, and so I'll try that. They haven't published the full recipe yet, but I'm pretty sure by the time that I upload this video, I will have the original recipe available, because they want to do that, obviously, and there will be a pack from the Malt Miller, the company in the UK that makes ready sets with malt and hops and everything, so that you can buy from their shop. And so I will post links of all this stuff down in the video description if you want to find out more. Watch the documentary if you haven't yet. It is very prominently featured even in Germany, so I don't think many people won't have seen it who watched my channel. But if you haven't, please do, it's really nice. They're mixing a bit of historical and modern aspects in this beer, so let's go through everything step by step. First of all, the malt. They use Chevalier mostly, but they dilute it a bit with normal pale malt. You can find out about that on the ingredients list on the Meantime's shop website. So this is historically accurate. They would be using a lot of Chevalier in the time between 1820 and 1920. That was the main malt. They would dilute it with pale malt from other regions, which had different nitrogen content. They would usually also introduce some sugar. That is what they didn't do, even though Meantime does have a London IPA which uses sugar, so they could have used the knowledge of Meantime at that point, but they decided against it. I have my German-grown Chevalier malt in here. I will crush that in a second, see that I get a very nice grist that has a lot of the hulls still intact and everything to get me a good sparging. And then I will use that. My Chevalier, though, is not the one that Crisp produces. This is German grown and malted with a standard malt program. So I get a lot of less yield with this one. I think it's because the proteins in there, which are a lot, are not as soluble as they need to be. So my taste will be just slightly different because the malting was different and also the yield is a lot lower. That is why instead of using the normal 1050 grams that I would usually use for a gravity of 14 degree Plato or 1056 as they reached in their recipe, I will need to use 1200 grams of Chevalier. If you are new to my channel, I usually do very small amounts of beer, just the stuff that fits in these demijohns. This is 4.5 liters, 1 UK gallon. And this just allows me to brew a lot of beer, trying out a lot of different recipes, but not having the whole cellar full of beer, which I can't possibly drink on my own. So I will do that amount, and for that I usually always do 4 liters of mash liquor, 3 liters of sparge liquor, though because of the high amount of grain I'm using 4.5 liters of mash liquor today, trying to get just everything kind of constant. To get this malt to work better, because I usually would get a lot of chill haze and low yield, I'm going to do 2 protein rests with this one. One at 10 minutes at 52 degrees, one 10 minutes at 57 degrees. The first one creates more soluble amino acids, and the second one creates more, it basically turns the long chains that you would usually drop out during the boil into more usable proteins. So I hope the first one just makes my beer a bit clearer. The second one creates more yield. That's the goal I need to do. And this is the first time that I'm trying to adjust my mashing program to this grain. So bear with me if not everything works perfectly. And then 65 degrees, 1 hour. This is the standard procedure that they would use back in the day. And because Chevalier has such a high protein content, you will get a very high residual gravity, final gravity. And so you don't need to create a lot of dextrins in the mash with high temperatures. Hopping. Hopping is quite difficult because that is something that the chaps from the Craft Beer channel haven't published yet, which they will probably at the time that the video comes out, as I said earlier. They use definitely East Kent Golding for the boil, completely and nothing else. I think they're going for 45 IBU. They said lower than 50, as 50 was what they did in the first test beer. And I'm going to use 15 grams of my Eastern Golding, which should give me 45 IBU. I think this will be a good value. 90 minutes of boil, so that is done. Then we come to the other things. They don't do any late additions in the boil, which is not historically accurate. People back then would add hops at 30 minutes to the boil, sometimes even 10 minutes, just to get some flavor in there. They were not fans of the whirlpool, so the whirlpool that is done in this recipe is not historically accurate, but who cares? They are using modern British hops, not historically accurate, of course, but that's the point of the video. They want to promote the modern British hops. I have Olicana, I have Jester. I do not have Harlequin, as I said. Instead, I'm going to use... I have Cone Goldings here. I don't need those. I'm going to use Archer. Archer is a modern hop variety as well. I think that one is not from Charles Farren, but Y College, but don't quote me on that. So it's a different breeding program. And then, because I want to substitute Harlequin, which gives peach and passion fruit and pineapple, Archer gives me peach, and then I use Cashmere, which is an American hop, unfortunately, but that one is very strong in pineapple, and now I will combine these two to substitute Harlequin. So how will I do this? They are saying that in the whirlpool, Olicana is the lead and a bit of Jester. So I'm going to mix it 2-to-1, and I want to get 15 grams in the whirlpool, just to have similar quantities in each of the doses, because that is what Meantime did, for example, in the London IPA, and I think it might be what they did as well again. So 2-to-1, 15 grams in total, Olicana 2, Jester 1, so you can calculate the ratios easily from there. And then for the dry hop, which will of course be later, I'm not sure how they did the dry hop, but Meantime has previously done dry hops at 7 degrees at the end of fermentation, so cold crash fermentation at the end of fermentation, add the hops and then go towards packaging. In my case, this will be the secondary fermentation in the kegs. So for that, they use all three hops, Harlequin, Olicana and Jester. I will try to get something that is a mixture. So trying to get to 13.5 grams, I will just use 1.5 grams of Jester, very small amounts as they stated. Then 6 grams of Olicana, quite a lot. And then the other 6 grams will be 2-to-1 Archer and Cashmere mixed. And from that you will get your doses. And that will be quite a lot of hops. 3 grams per liter is what they stated in a previous in the Q&A video, I think. So I know that that is the ratio that they did. Okay, so my water has been boiled earlier today, so that all the chalk precipitates, and then I added a lot of sulfate and some calcium chloride as well. This boosts my minerals up a lot. I'm trying to get something close to Burton profile, but a bit more balanced, a bit more chloride than I think Burton used. Not 100% sure about that, but I can show the values on the screen. 200 grams of 200 grams. That would be interesting. 200 milligrams per liter of calcium, just short of that for chloride, and over 400 for calcium sulfate, for sulfate. The yeast they're using is the NCYC1318, and it is curiously close to the Y yeast 1318, which I have here in a starter. I have used this twice before. Neither of the beers were very successful because the yeast doesn't flocculate well. It is very easily tired because the yeast requires a lot of oxygen. One of the manufacturers of that yeast strain describes that. I think it's Imperial yeast. They say this yeast needs a lot of oxygen. So from the very small amount that I harvested from my first brew, so not the fully tired one from the second, but from the first brew, I propagate this in the starter now. I keep stirring this, so this will propagate more and more, trying to get to a state where this will be strong and healthy, and then put it in there. And I am aiming towards something like 20 degrees, but I don't have a controlled fermentation, so this might be 21, might be 19.5. We'll see. Okay, and then we're almost done with the recipe. So normally what I would do with the yeast, you can see that this has a nice stable foam layer on top because the starter really works well. This is 2 days since I started the starter. And the important thing here is that normally I would do a cold crash with this yeast. So I would put it in the fridge now, and in the evening I would just harvest the bottom and decant the liquid. This yeast flocculates so little that I really am not confident in selecting the bottom residue. So I will just chuck all this into it. I just have to boil down the water a lot and then use this to dilute it. I think this should be fine. Yeah, there's no sign of any flocculation in there. Everything's just cloudy and murky. Okay, this would be the recipe. Then I'm going to crush the grain, mash in, and we'll see how the rest of the recipe goes. And I will have shown for comparison the recipe that is the original if they published it yet. And that will show you any differences that you might want to adapt if you want to be more accurate. And then you would of course need the crisp Chevalier, the one that I have here, which is not commercially available one. Okay, so this would be everything from my side. I hope you're interested in the recipe because I'm really looking forward to drinking this beer. Not sure if I'm going to get a can because they don't ship outside the UK. I would have to get there, which is practically impossible. My wife is highly pregnant at the moment and I can't really leave the house, pretty much. That would be everything, and then I'll see you for the tasting, which will be the next video, just coming in a few days. And if YouTube doesn't suggest it, just search for it on my channel. It should be readily available. Alright, and then I'll see you next time. Bye bye.